Welcome. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place you come to plunge headfirst into, well, the really compelling ideas, the stuff that sticks with you. We try to cut through all the noise and get right to the heart of what matters.
That's the goal.
And today, we're setting off on a pretty fascinating journey, I think. We're going to explore the profound, sometimes totally transformative power of words.
Yeah, it's something we probably take for granted, isn't it?
Totally. I mean,
Yeah.
think about it. Some speeches, even just certain phrases, they don't just pass on information, do they?
Not at all.
They seem to echo through time. They don't just inform us, they actually transform how we see history. They ignite this deep sense of purpose. Sometimes they literally compel us towards collective action. So our mission today is really to uncover those maybe universal principles of rhetoric, of persuasion that work across different times, different places, and to see how these principles don't just motivate, but actually call us to a deeper, kind of more personal sense of civic responsibility.
And that's exactly why this deep dive feels so crucial right now. We're not just dusting off historical artifacts, although, yeah, we'll definitely touch on some huge ones that really shaped our world.
Right.
But what we're really digging into are the, let's call them blueprints for impact, the deliberate craft behind those speeches that moved entire nations.
Okay. So how they actually did it.
Exactly. We'll be asking what makes them so powerful, how did they cut through all the noise of their own time, and why does their message still resonate across generations? Why do they still feel relevant today?
Yeah, that's the key question, the why now.
Right. And our core themes today, they're going to revolve around how these great communicators frame struggles, how they issue these really powerful, sometimes unequivocal calls to action, and how they prompt this vital reflection on civic responsibility.
So struggle, action, responsibility.
Well,
Got it.
Yeah. We'll see how different figures, from ancient Greece right up to modern activists, how they grapple with these big concepts and use language to inspire, sometimes to challenge, and ultimately to try and change things.
Okay, let's unpack this first part then. Framing the struggle.
Yeah.
It seems like one of the most powerful ways leaders and thinkers do this, framing the issues of their time, is by linking them to a much bigger story, right? Often a really personal historical narrative.
That's absolutely right. That they get that to move people, you can't just talk about the here and now. You've got to weave it into the past. Give the current moment this profound urgency, maybe even a sense of historical necessity.
This isn't new, folks. We've been here before.
Pretty much, it's about reminding us that we're not the first,
Yeah.
that we stand on the shoulders of others who face similar battles. It grounds the struggle.
Okay, so take Nelson Mandela. His famous "I am prepared to die" speech from the trial in '64. He didn't just launch into a list of problems, did he?
No, not at all. He started really personally connecting to history. He talked about his youth back in the Transky, listening to the elders.
Right, the stories.
Exactly. Stories of ancestors defending their homeland. He mentioned names like Dingaan, Babada, Moshoeshoe, these legendary African leaders, warriors who, much like European heroes, represented fierce resistance against being conquered, against colonial rule.
So he's drawing a parallel there. These aren't just rebels. They're patriots in their own right.
Precisely. For Mandela, this wasn't abstract history class stuff. It was lived reality, this lineage of defiance. And that deeply fueled his hope, even as a young man, to serve his people, to join their freedom struggle.
You can see how that sense of being part of something bigger, this ongoing story, would motivate everything he did. It shapes the stakes.
And what's really fascinating is how that personal framing, connecting his own struggle to this ancestral fight for land, for self-determination, how it immediately legitimizes what he's doing, not just for his people, but eventually for the whole world.
Yeah, it reframes him.
Right. He's not just some, political agitator. He's carrying on a historical struggle for basic dignity. And then after setting that stage, he gives this very calm, very sober assessment of the political situation after what he described as many years of tyranny, exploitation, and oppression of my people by the whites.
And he was remarkably frank, wasn't he? He admitted to planning sabotage.
He did. And importantly, he explained why. Not out of recklessness, not because he loved violence, quite the opposite. He said he believed, profoundly but reluctantly, that violence by the African people had become, in his words, inevitable.
Because of government policy.
Yes, solely because of government policy. And this wasn't him calling for chaos. He saw it as a leadership duty, actually, to canalize and control the feelings of our people.
To channel it, basically, prevent something worse.
Exactly, to prevent uncontrolled terrorism, which he abhorred. He drew this crucial line between strategic, targeted resistance and just random, indiscriminate violence. He wanted to ensure that if violence had to happen, it was directed, purposeful, under disciplined leadership.
That choice, though, for defiance,
Yeah.
even sabotage,
Yeah.
it sounds incredibly risky, morally complex, especially given his earlier commitment to nonviolence.
Mm-hmm.
How did he square that, do you think, especially with other nonviolent movements happening then?
That's such a profound question, isn't it? Because it really speaks to the ultimate burden of leadership when every other door is slammed shut.
Yeah.
Mandela wasn't pushing violence as a first option. He was meticulous in laying out why it became the absolute last resort.
Yeah.
He gave two really stark reasons. First, he argued that without responsible leadership guiding the people's anger, uncontrolled violence would just erupt anyway, maybe a bloodbath. So it was almost a pragmatic necessity to channel that inevitable force.
A grim calculation.
Incredibly grim. Second, and this is crucial, he genuinely believed there was no way open to the African people to succeed in their struggle against the principle of white supremacy through peaceful means anymore.
Why? What had happened?
Because all the lawful ways of opposing the government, petitions, protests, strikes, they'd all been systematically shut down. Through legislation, through arrests, through just brutal suppression.
So the government had literally outlawed peaceful dissent.
Effectively, yes. They were left with this agonizing choice. Either accept a permanent state of inferiority, living under what he called a police state, or defy the government in a way, anyway, that had even a tiny chance of working. They chose defiance. Not because they wanted conflict, but as this desperate, principled stand against total subjugation.
So it wasn't ideology driving it, but a reaction to an utterly inflexible, violently enforced system. And he backed this up with specifics, right? He didn't just talk vaguely about oppression.
No, he painted this incredibly vivid, detailed picture, the stark contrasts. South Africa, he said, richest country in Africa, maybe one of the richest in the world, yet Africans lived in poverty and misery.
He mentioned the farm laborers.
Yeah, a staggering 30% were laborers, tenants, squatters on white farms, living and working in conditions he compared chillingly to the serfs of the Middle Ages. Just think about that comparison.
Wow.
But he went further. He detailed how the government actively sabotaged African education, stopping subsidies for school feeding, for example, which for many kids was their only reliable meal.
And the spending gap.
Egregious. In 1960-61, government spending on African students in state-aided schools, about R12.46 per student. For white kids in the Cape Province, R144.57.
That's more than 10 times the amount.
Over 11 times. These weren't just numbers, they were a moral indictment, meticulously constructed. Mandela knew that to challenge that regime, you had to show the lived, quantifiable suffering. This wasn't just trial evidence, it was like a blueprint for global advocacy, forcing the world to see apartheid's deliberate systemic cruelty.
It's those details, presented so calmly but firmly, that just strip away any pretense the apartheid government might have had. It shows the poverty, the lack of opportunity. It wasn't accidental, it was calculated state policy.
Exactly. Calculated to maintain white supremacy. And it's this ability, this powerful way of articulating the deep personal impact of institutionalized oppression.
Well, it echoes so strongly, doesn't it, in Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech?
Yeah.
He also captures that unyielding nature of the fight for justice.
Oh, absolutely. King's line, no, we are not satisfied and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Just unforgettable. Such a powerful image. It's not just unstoppable like a force of nature, but it has that deep biblical resonance too, right? From the prophet Amos.
Yeah, it elevates the whole struggle. It's not just politics, it's a moral imperative. Like, this is how the universe should be ordered.
And King, just like Mandela, deeply understood his audience. He acknowledged that many there had come out of great trials and tribulations. Some were fresh from narrow jail cells.
He's speaking to them, not at them.
Precisely. He wasn't addressing some abstract public. He was talking to a community bound together by shared suffering, shared hope, shared resolve. He connected their personal pain to the larger historical fight for civil rights, making that call to action feel historically necessary, part of this long, hard fight.
He gave voice to their pain and their dreams with such clarity, impossible to ignore.
And that's the fascinating thing here, isn't it? The way these narratives, these stories, legitimize the action. They build solidarity. The struggle isn't just some current event. It's rooted deeply in history, making that call to act feel, well, essential, part of a fight stretching back generations.
It is remarkable how that pattern repeats. When you look back even further, say to ancient Greece, like with Demosthenes, what strikes you about how he handled that universal danger and indifference he saw? It feels familiar, that apathy.
It really does. And Demosthenes' Philippics is such a relevant ancient example of this political military struggle. He's speaking to Athenians about the threat from Philip of Macedon, trying to shake them out of their complacency
How did he do that?
by reminding them of past glories, contrasting it with present dangers. He recalled the Athenian Confederacy beating Sparta, the naval victory at Naxos back in 376 BCE, which basically ended Spartan dominance.
Oh, look what we used to be capable of.
Exactly, highlighting what Athens could do compared to their current inaction. And what's really striking is his description of their military, relying on mercenaries who were irregularly and insufficiently paid.
Why? Where was the money going?
Largely because public funds were being sucked up by something called the Thidric Fund, originally for theater tickets and public festivals,
Okay.
but it had ballooned, absorbing a huge chunk of the treasury. So raising money for the actual army often meant unpopular direct property taxes.
Ah, so people weren't willing to sacrifice for collective security. They preferred public entertainment over defense.
That's the implication. It's a classic case of a society maybe getting a bit too comfortable in peacetime, losing its edge, its discipline, even as a major threat was building right next door.
A breakdown in civic investment, then. Different context than Mandela's points about education spending, but a similar theme of misplaced priorities.
Definitely. And Demosthenes painted this vivid picture of Philip's tactics: relentless, aggressive, attacking cities like Methone, confusing others like Perinthus and Byzantium. He specifically warned about Philip's policy of deferring the formal announcement of hostile intentions until the last second.
Keeping them guessing. Psychological warfare.
Exactly. Philip wasn't just about brute force. He was a master strategist, using calculated ambiguity to stop Greece from uniting against him. And the mood in Greece then, Demosthenes called it universal danger and indifference. Each city was just hoping the problem wouldn't land on their doorstep.
Praying that it may not fall upon themselves. Chilling.
It really is. It's a timeless warning, isn't it? Collective inaction in the face of tyranny. That human tendency to hope problems just disappear instead of facing them head on. Demosthenes was basically shouting, "Wake up, your neighbor's house is on fire and you're next."
Okay, let's bring this forward again. How do more contemporary figures handle this theme of struggle? Anna Quinlan, for instance, in that 2011 Grinnell College speech, she shifted it, right? From military or civil rights to something more economic, social.
She did. She used that powerful metaphor of America as a house.
Yeah.
The roof was so leaky, the walls so bowed, the termites so widespread that it began to crumble.
Very visceral. It suggests systemic decay, not just a policy issue.
And she didn't pull any punches. She rejected the usual soft-pedaled apologies about the economy, the job market was looking lean, housing market uncertain, stuff that graduates were hearing everywhere then.
Yeah, the standard commencement platitudes.
Right. Instead, she completely reframed what doing better meant for those graduates, moving sharply away from just inheriting material stuff, the SUV or the McMansion or the corner office that was way too big.
So what was her alternative?
She starkly pointed out the failure of business as usual, of the way things have always been done. She basically said the old rules, the old promises, they're broken. And it's your job, graduates, to build something new, something better, a fundamental rethink of success and societal health.
And Tony Kushner at Vassar, he also touched on social unrest, didn't he? Economic justice, even loneliness, as things people were crying out about.
Yes, he talked about a global, multiculturalist, anti-tribalist, identity-based movement for pluralist democracy, reflecting on how things had shifted, become more complex, maybe since historical markers like Stonewall.
So all these speakers, ancient and modern, they see struggle as just, inherent, part of the human deal, constantly evolving, demanding new ways to engage, new language, new kinds of leadership.
I think that's exactly right. It's this constant process of redefining what it means to fight for a better world, whatever the specific context might be.
Okay, this is where it gets, for me anyway, really interesting. We've seen what these leaders talk about: history, injustice, struggle. But understanding why those words hit so hard, how they actually move people, move nations. That means we need to look behind the curtain, right? At the actual craft of persuasion.
Absolutely. And for that, you really have to go back to the ancient masters. They practically wrote the playbook. Aristotle, Cicero, Quintilian, their foundations are still incredibly relevant.
So Aristotle, He gave us the big three, right? Ethos, pathos, logos.
Yeah.
Break those down. Ethos first, the speaker's character.
Right, ethos. Aristotle argued, persuasion is by means of character whenever the speech is spoken in such a way as to make the speaker trustworthy. Basically, we're more likely to believe people we see as decent, as credible.
Makes sense.
But here's the crucial bit he added. This trustworthiness ought to come about through the speech, and not because the speaker has a prior reputation.
Ah. So it's not just about being a good person. It's about demonstrating that goodness, that credibility, in the moment of speaking.
Precisely. Through your words, your tone, your arguments, you have to earn that trust right then and there. Aristotle thought character, ethos, was just about the most decisive means of persuasion. Without trust, even brilliant logic can just fall flat.
That's huge. Okay, then pathos, the emotional side, the audience's feelings.
Exactly. Pathos is about tapping into the disposition, the emotional state of the listener. As Aristotle put it, persuasion is by means of the hearers whenever they are led on into passion by the speech. Why? Because we do not render our judgments the same way when grieved as when delighted or when friendly as when hostile.
Our emotions cloud or maybe clarify our judgment.
They certainly shape it. A speaker might try to evoke anger at injustice, maybe hope for a better future, fear of what might happen if we don't act, or just a warm sense of shared community. These feelings aren't just like decoration for the argument. They actively change how the audience hears and responds to the message.
Okay, ethos, pathos, and logos. The logic, the argument itself.
Logos. Persuasion is by means of speech whenever we show something that is true, or appears so, from things that are persuasive on each subject. This is the reasoned argument, the evidence, the facts, the structure.
But Aristotle went deeper with this, didn't he? He talked about something called entymemes.
Yes, entymemes. He called them the characteristic building block of a rhetorical speech. Think of them as rhetorical syllogisms. Basically, arguments where one piece, one premise is left unstated.
Why leave it unstated?
Because it's assumed the audience already accepts it or can easily figure it out. It displays evidence for an opinion that cannot be turned into knowledge, in a strict scientific sense, but it still creates strong conviction.
How does that work?
Because the audience mentally fills in the missing piece. It makes the argument feel more intuitive, more collaborative.
Yeah.
It's like they reach the conclusion partly on their own. Very powerful.
Can you give an example, maybe from King or Mandela?
Sure. Think about King's line. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. Okay. The unstated premise, the one everyone in that crowd understood deep in their bones, is that the promise of American democracy, of equality, is completely hollow if it doesn't apply equally and meaningfully to everyone.
Right. That's the assumed foundation.
Exactly. They fill in the weight of history, the pain of denied rights. It makes the argument for voting rights feel not just logical, but morally undeniable. It bypasses a lengthy proof by hitting that shared value, that shared experience.
That makes total sense. The audience participates in making the meaning. Aristotle also talked about wording, right? Clarity, appropriateness, but also elevating the language.
Yeah, he talked about the virtue of clarity and appropriateness in language, but with an interesting nuance. He suggested that sometimes elevating language away from what is prevalent gives it a more dignified appearance. It's a balance.
Not jargon, but eloquence.
Eloquence, exactly. Finding language that is clear but also compelling, maybe memorable. And underpinning all this was his core belief that things that are true and things that are by nature stronger than their opposites.
Like truth has an inherent power.
Almost a kind of cosmic advantage, yeah. That rhetoric can tap into and amplify the power of truth and justice, making them ultimately more persuasive than lies or injustice, at least in the long run.
Okay, so moving from Aristotle the analyzer to Cicero, the actual Roman orator statesman, what was his ideal?
Cicero wanted a speech that was gravis et ornata, et hominum sensibus ac mentibus accommodata, which means weighty, ornate, and adapted to human feelings and minds.
Ornate, does that just mean fancy?
Not just fancy or decorative. It means an elegance, a richness of language that actually serves the persuasive goal, makes the message more memorable, more impactful. Cicero saw the orator's job as immense, truly foundational for society.
How so?
He said the orator's task covered everything from establishing cities, writing laws, equity, justice, faith, breaking down desires, shaping human morals. I mean, that's huge.
Well, basically building civilization through words.
Pretty much. For Cicero, the orator was like a civic architect, shaping the very fabric of society. And to do that, he insisted this entire topic of life and morals must be thoroughly learned by the orator. You needed deep knowledge, not just of words, but of human nature, of ethics, of how societies function.
This is a really holistic view. The orator as a kind of philosopher leader,
Mm.
and then Quintilian, another Roman master, he built on this.
Which he did. Quintilian outlined the orator's three main aims: to instruct, move, and charm his hearers. He also saw the huge power of emotion in rhetoric, and he even made a distinction between pathos for the more violent emotions like anger, fear, outrage,
Okay.
ethos for the calmer, gentler ones, sympathy, goodwill, mild approval, showing a really nuanced grasp of emotional appeals.
Did he talk about specific tools?
Yes. He discussed things like amplification or denosis. He defined it as language giving additional force to things unjust, cruel, or hateful.
Making bad things sound even worse.
Essentially, yes. He said eloquence could awaken emotions which either do not naturally arise from the case or are stronger than the case would suggest. Think about Mandela detailing those education spending gaps.
Right. The R12 versus R144.
Exactly. That's not just stating a fact. It's deliberate amplification to make the injustice feel even more outrageous, to intensify the emotional reaction. It shows how language can reshape perception, ramp up feelings beyond just the raw data.
And ultimately, Quintilian stressed
Yeah.
wisdom,
Yes.
sagacity,
Sassy.
the wisdom to adapt your speech to the specific circumstances of time and place and to the persons with whom we are concerned. That strategic sense, knowing your audience, knowing the moment, that's what separates a truly great orator from just a good one. It lets them maximize their impact.
So if we tie these ancient ideas back to the bigger picture, they're not just dusty old theories, are they? They seem to be the actual engine driving collective action throughout history.
Absolutely. They bridge that gap between having an idea and making it happen in the world.
Yeah.
They're the roadmap for turning personal conviction into a widespread movement.
Mm.
Like with Simon Sinek's analysis of Martin Luther King Jr., he makes a very contemporary point, but it echoes these ancient truths, doesn't it?
It really does. Sinek argues it was not Martin Luther King's unflappable conviction that was able to stir a population, but his ability to put his WHY into words.
The why.
Yeah. Sinek says King's clarity of WHY, his sense of purpose, gave him the strength and energy to continue his fight. King didn't just tell people what to do, march, sit in. He explained why he believed it was essential.
Starting with belief.
Exactly. Sinek points out how King kept saying, I believe, I believe, I believe, and he clearly laid out the difference between just laws, those aligning with moral law, and unjust laws that degrade human personality. That gave the movement an undeniable moral framework, a powerful why.
And that fits Sinek's whole start with why idea, right? Like with the Wright brothers beating Langley, or how Apple markets itself. People connect with the purpose, the belief, not just the product or the plan.
Precisely. The why taps into much deeper human motivations than just the what or the how.
And this human element, understanding what truly moves people. Dale Carnegie was all over that too, wasn't he? In How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, completely. Carnegie identified that the deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated, that fundamental need for value, for recognition. It can be an incredibly powerful lever for persuasion, sometimes much more than logic or force.
He had that story about Rockefeller and the striking miners.
Yes, a fantastic example. Rockefeller faced this situation just seething with hatred, but instead of threats, he managed to calm these tempestuous waves of hate by actually making friends, talking to the miners, their families, showing genuine interest, and then he presented the facts, but in such a friendly manner.
And it worked.
Astonishingly well, Carnegie says. It apparently led strikers back to work without even getting the wage increases they initially demanded. It just shows that persuasion isn't always about winning an argument. Sometimes it's about building rapport, showing empathy, valuing the other person even when you disagree, humanizing the conflict.
That really speaks to the power of connection, even in really tense situations. Empathy, achieving what antagonism can't. Now, bringing it into modern psychology, Tony Robbins talks about transformational vocabulary. What's that about?
Robbins realized personally that by changing my habitual vocabulary, I was transforming my experience. The idea is that the words we use, even just in our own heads, profoundly shape how we perceive reality, our emotional state, and ultimately what we're capable of doing.
So language shapes our inner world too.
Very much so. He talks about how a single global metaphor can instantly transform the way you look at your entire life. It's about using language not just to persuade others, but for self-leadership, consciously choosing words that empower you rather than disempower you.
And this connects to collective action how?
By consciously reshaping our internal representations that empower collective action through powerful communication, both internal self-talk and external speech, we can fundamentally shift our mindset and therefore our actions. It's a direct line from the words we choose inside and out to our beliefs and then to our behavior, individually and collectively. Rhetoric starts within, you could say.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. History, struggle, the mechanics of persuasion. What does this all boil down to for us personally, collectively right now? How do these insights become a real call to action, especially around civic responsibility and leadership?
Well, it points strongly towards a sense of obligation, maybe particularly for those who've had educational advantages. A burden, yes, but also a huge opportunity.
Anna Quinlan hit this hard in that Grinnell speech, didn't she?
She really did. She told those graduates straight up, you owe this country your best efforts, you're lucky people, you stand in the place of others, past and present, as do I.
Wow, no ambiguity there.
None. It's a clear statement of the great responsibility and even moral obligation that comes with privilege, especially educational privilege. It's not just about what you can do with your education, but what you kind of have to do for those who came before, those who helped you get there, and those who won't get the same chance.
So education isn't just for personal gain, it's for society.
That's her core argument. And she didn't just leave it at obligation. She challenged them, don't cave to the status quo, reject the safe path, because it's the enemy of the satisfying.
She urged them to build an audacious and authentic new world. That sounds exciting, but what does audacious and authentic really mean there? How does she push them to actually build it, not just fit in?
Good question. For Quinlan, I think audacious means having the guts to question the way things are, to propose maybe radical new ideas, not being afraid of seeming idealistic or disruptive.
Okay? And authentic.
Authentic means acting from your core values, your real convictions, refusing to compromise your principles just for comfort or what looks like conventional success. She's saying, look, the old paths, the business as usual, clearly led to failures. Remember her leaky house metaphor.
Right.
So just fitting into that broken system, that's not good enough. These graduates, she implies, are uniquely equipped, intellectually and maybe morally, to find and build new ways forward. The inspiration comes from framing their education not as a prize, but as this powerful tool to fix what's broken and build what's just. That's where the meaning comes from, beyond just a paycheck.
That's a really powerful charge to give someone starting out. And Theodore Shaw at Wesleyan in 2014, he echoed that urgency, didn't he? But maybe more bluntly.
Very bluntly, he just cut right through any procrastination. It's not about being perfect, having it all, doing it all. It's about getting started. You've got work to do so. Congratulations, and let's get to it.
And that direct command, don't wait to change the world.
Yeah. He's hitting that common human thing, right? Waiting until everything's perfect, until we feel totally ready. He's saying, no, stop waiting. Impact starts with the first step, however imperfect.
And that idea of immediate purposeful action, it leads right into thinking about leadership itself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Leadership that's about more than just looking out for number one.
Exactly. Which brings us to people like Les Brown. In Live Your Dreams, he talks about his own journey, how his dream of greatness wasn't just a wish, it was an active force driving him.
Yeah.
But then he reflects on his time in the legislature and makes this really sharp observation. The people who find it hard to give up that kind of power are those who identify too closely with it.
Ooh, that's insightful. Why is it so hard for some leaders to let go of power?
Yeah.
What does that say about real leadership versus just holding authority?
It's such a critical point, and you see it play out all the time. Brown's touching on the ego, right? When someone identifies too much with their powerful position, losing that position feels like losing part of themselves. It's a threat to their identity, not just a change in job title. True leadership, Brown suggests, is more about stewardship. Serving something bigger than your own ego, empowering others, not just collecting influence for yourself.
So what does he suggest leaders should do?
He calls for them to find something they can do together for the collective good, like helping senior citizens, decreasing violence in school, forming study groups. He really stresses that making a difference means giving of themselves, being attentive to others, service over self. It fundamentally flips the script on leadership. It's not about commanding, it's about collaborating, creating, genuinely caring for the community.
And Tony Robbins, he frames leadership as an active choice too, right? In unlimited power.
Yes, a conscious choice. deciding to hold yourself to a higher standard, deciding to contribute. He talks about cultural responsibility and leadership.
What does that mean, cultural responsibility?
It's about encouraging people to take responsibility for the representations they support and to be leaders in their communities, recognizing that your actions, your words, they shape the culture around you.
And that higher standard, is it just about personal success?
For Robbins, I think a higher standard goes way beyond just achieving more. It's about being more. Operating with integrity, showing empathy, inspiring ethical behavior, constantly trying to improve not just your own life, but the lives of people around you.
So understanding your ripple effect.
Exactly. Whether you're a parent, a neighbor, a boss, whatever, you're contributing to the cultural fabric. So take responsibility for that. Choose to spread positive, empowering values. And for Robbins, success isn't some finish line you cross. It's an evolving process, continuous growth, continuous contribution, no resting on your laurels.
That idea of continuous evolution, responsibility. Ziegler touches on that too in See You Good at the Top. He has these steps, and the second one seems key.
Which one is that?
The recognition of the worth and ability of other people, as well as the necessity of effectively living and working with them. That feels foundational for any kind of collective good.
Absolutely foundational. You can't lead or contribute effectively if you don't genuinely value others and understand you need to work with them.
And Ziegler makes that sharp distinction between prisoners of hope, the wishful thinkers, and the people who actually do something.
Right. He says, if you will use what you have, you will be given more to use. Life also tells you if you don't use it, you'll lose it.
That's a powerful nudge, isn't it? Use your skills, your talents, or they'll just fade away. What's the deeper point there? Separating passive hope from active hope.
It's all about agency, isn't it? The prisoners of hope are stuck waiting. They want change, sure, but they're waiting for someone else or someday to make it happen. They haven't taken personal ownership.
Whereas Ziegler is pushing
For an active, engaged hope, a hope that actually makes you move, even if it's just small steps. That idea of use it or lose it, or use what you have and you'll get more, it's not just motivational fluff. It's an observation about how engagement, effort genuinely seems to open up more opportunities, more resources. Complacency, on the other hand, leads to stagnation. It directly links your personal effort to your potential impact.
Okay, then there's Kurt Vonnegut. A totally different vibe, more humanistic, maybe countercultural. His advice in that 1970 Bennington speech.
Yeah, Vonnegut's unique. He told them to skylark until you have the power, and then use that power to help the old and the sick and the shy and the poor and people nobody likes.
And his famous rule?
His overarching rule, God damn it, you gotta be kind. He even said he wanted to infect people with humane ideas before they're able to defend themselves.
It's such a mix, isn't it?
Yeah.
Playful, irreverent, but with this profound moral core. How does his simple call for kindness fit with all the grand ideas about rhetoric and leadership?
I think it's brilliant because it cuts through everything else, right down to the absolute foundation of decent human interaction, empathy, compassion. While Aristotle and Cicero taught the how of persuasion, Vonnegut reminds us of the ultimate why, to build a more humane world.
And the skylarking part.
That advice to skylark until you have power, it feels like a subtle critique of chasing influence too soon. Maybe suggesting you need to live a little, understand life, build empathy before you try to wield power. And once you have it, it's not for you, it's for serving the vulnerable.
God damn it, you've got to be kind. It's like a moral anchor.
It is. It's an unvarnished absolute. It reminds us that all the fancy rhetoric, all the leadership strategies, they don't mean much if they're not ultimately serving a greater, kinder good. Which raises that big question, doesn't it? How do we actually cultivate this? Mix the conviction, the communication skills, a sense of responsibility in ourselves today.
Yeah, how do we do that?
Well, ultimately, I think it comes down to self-awareness and just intentional action day by day.
And sometimes, maybe, getting a nudge from someone else. Les Brown talked about his mentor, Mr. Washington.
Right. Mr. Washington instilled in me that I was going to do something special and that drugs, alcohol, poverty, and hopelessness were not to be my life's companions. That external belief, that mentorship, it lit a fire under him.
It shows how powerful that external validation can be, planting that seed of self-belief.
Absolutely. And Brown emphasizes that we need to be empowered with a sense that we have greatness within us. His message is pure resilience, isn't it? As long as life holds forth possibilities, no one can be counted out. go after your goals, live your dreams. It's about finding that inner Mr. Washington, believing in your own potential, and actively chasing it no matter what.
And Tony Robbins gives us some practical tools for that kind of self-leadership, doesn't he?
Mhm.
Managing beliefs, managing our state.
Yes, he explains how beliefs act as filters for our perceptions and direct commands to our nervous system, meaning our internal stories literally shape how we see the world, how we feel, what we do.
So we can change the story.
That's his point. By becoming aware of our current beliefs and consciously choosing to adopt those that promote our goals, we can reshape our mindset. It's like doing internal rhetoric on yourself, proactive mental and emotional management.
And small changes can make a big difference.
He assures us there's a ripple effect where small shifts lead to significant changes. You don't always need a massive personal revolution. Sometimes it's about consistent, deliberate tweaks. So this inner work, managing beliefs, managing emotions, combined with the skills we've talked about for communicating outwardly, that really forms the bedrock for impactful leadership, for responsible citizenship. It's about getting your inner world and your outer actions lined up to make a real difference. Hashtag outro.
Wow. We have really covered some ground today, haven't we? From ancient rhetoric with Aristotle and Cicero to looking at these deep historical struggles through the words of Mandela and King, and then hearing these really potent modern calls to action from people like Quinlan and Vonnegut. It feels like the common thread, the thing weaving through it all, is just the deliberate, profound use of words. Using language to shape reality, to stir people up, to inspire change.
It really is. And whether it's a leader facing down tyranny or an orator trying to sway a democracy or just us reflecting on our own responsibilities, the tools are there.
Yeah, the tools seem available to all of us, really, to unleash our own dreams, maybe make a difference, big or small, both inside ourselves and out in the world.
And what we've seen, I think, is that true eloquence, real civic leadership, that push for progress, it's not just about flashy speeches or having some innate talent. It's more about consistency, isn't it? Clarity of purpose.
Yeah.
And this unwavering commitment to values that go beyond just ourselves.
Living the message.
Exactly. Demonstrating through your actions what you're saying with your words. Whether it's the orator trying to instruct, move, and charm, or the leader having that crystal clear why, like Civic talked about, or even just that basic fundamental commitment to kindness that Vonnegut nailed. The power to influence, to uplift, it seems to live in that sweet spot between thoughtful action and articulate conviction.
Okay, so for you, our listener, maybe a final thought to chew on. It comes from Ursula K. Le Guin, who gave us this zinger. Hope only makes sense when it doesn't make sense to be hopeful. This is your century. Take it and run as if your life depends on it.
Wow, that's a charge.
It really is. So in a world that throws so much at us, information, distractions, challenges that feel huge, what is the why that truly compels you? What makes you want to act, maybe to lead, to contribute something, even when things look bleak? How will you take that advice, maybe, to make the circumstances you desire instead of just waiting for them?
Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us today.